The best example in the world of clean, sustainable energy is the gas kitchen stove. So naturally the Democrats are banning them. Just how bad an idea this is, today on the 10th Man. The Democrats are the all-time champions of bad ideas, and this is one of their worst. The least amount of fuel used in America is the fuel we use to cook our food. If you're cooking with gas, it's also the cleanest fuel and the most efficient. Ideal situation. Naturally, the Democrats want to ban it. In the past 30 years, we've heard them complain that we are running out of gas. We didn't. They told us we need to switch to it from dirty coal in our power plants. We did. But because the Democrats thrive on bad news, to them it's like mother's milk, they have to create disasters out of a good thing, so now they're making natural gas a villain. Now you're cooking with gas. That's what they used to say because gas is the ideal kitchen fuel. It's used in 40% of American homes for that reason. If you're cooking with gas, it's also the cleanest fuel and the most efficient. Ideal situation. Naturally, the Democrats want to ban it. I'm not saying this just because I want to label everything they do as bad. I'm not simply giving all their ideas a negative label like racist or far left or an existential threat. Most ideas are some combination of pros and cons and are usually well-intentioned, at least in someone's mind. We might disagree on the magnitude of the problem or the means to fix it and have an honest debate. But this idea has nothing in its favor and everything against it. It's enough to scare you. The reason we have a Senate and an electoral college is so that people in the Midwest who represent a disproportionately large area of the country don't have to have every liberal idea, whether good or bad, crammed down their throats based on simple majority rule. Our federal system doesn't work perfectly, but it's better than nothing. The Toyota Prius, for example, is a car that saves gas in stop-and-go traffic, like they have in Los Angeles, because of its regenerative braking. There's no other benefit. Lugging a battery around so you can store a bit of energy when you put on the brakes does little for drivers on rural interstates, but there are incentives to buy them everywhere simply because California is the largest car market and the Prius has a benefit there. People in the Southwest run their air conditioners most of the year, and they also have water shortages. So people in the Great Lakes Basin are forced to buy expensive, high-efficiency air conditioners and water-saver toilets, which are of no benefit to people there where the AC is on only a few weeks of the year and water is plentiful. That's a lot of spend for a small benefit, which is bad for the people and bad for the planet. But people in the South and West, on the other hand, use inefficient and expensive electric resistance heat in their furnaces, water heaters, and clothes dryers, and they don't insulate their homes like people in the Midwest do. Why not? Why does the Midwest have to copy California and Arizona to save the planet while they ignore the best practices elsewhere? Because there's no economic payback? Okay, but that's a two-way street, or it should be. I look at this proposed ban on gas stoves and say, here we go again. Out on the coasts where these bans are beginning, they should be installing more gas lines to lower carbon emissions. Instead, they want to take out our gas service when it's more efficient to keep it. The expression cooking with gas originated just before World War II because gas cooking was such an improvement. If you've ever seen a wood-burning kitchen stove from that era, you know that you couldn't start cooking without first building a fire. You'd put kindling, tinder, and a log into the firebox on the side. Make sure the wood wasn't cottonwood or the house would smell like cat pee. White oak or black locust were good woods. Black and white got along inside the stove. Once a fire was going, or more correctly, had been going for a while, then you might think about cooking. These stoves were mechanical marvels with controllable air intakes and internal paths for the smoke to follow. You would send the smoke straight up the chimney when you needed the draft to light the stove. Then you could divert it around the stove if you were baking. On the cooktop, if you wanted high heat, you'd move your pot to the left, closer to the firebox. Lower temperatures were on the opposite side. It was a very versatile appliance, but it was complicated to operate. It took a long time to heat up and even longer to cool, like your electric range now. Then along came gas, and what an improvement. You know the reason. instant on, instant off, simplicity, and precise control of 4 burners plus the oven. By the 1940s, there were enough people cooking with gas that at first comedians and then the gas industry started using the phrase, "Now you're cooking with gas," to mean you're finally on the right track. Much like the people who buy Teslas or install solar energy brag about it now. You know, fuel snobbery. But convenience is not the woke reason for a gas stove. Efficiency is. When you burn gas in your stove, 100% of the energy is turned to heat. There's zero waste. Every molecule of gas you buy is being used to cook your food. Your gas furnace isn't as good, but even that is 80 to 95% efficient. If you switch from gas to electricity, though, you're still going to burn gas. You're just going to burn it at the power plant instead of in your home. And you'll burn a lot more of it. Power plants are efficient, but still, most of the energy they consume, 70%, goes up the smokestack. When it comes to electricity, that energy loss is just the price we have to pay because only electricity can light our homes and run our labor-saving appliances. But electric resistance is the worst way possible to make heat. It's more efficient to burn the fuel at the point of use than at a power plant, which is exactly what a gas stove does. They like to tell you electric heat is efficient because 100% of what is delivered turns into heat, but the energy delivered is only 30% of the energy you paid for. Then there's distribution of electricity versus gas. As you probably know, the electrical power grid is insufficient to supply the appliances we have now, not to mention the electric cars they want us to buy. And what about production? They'll need more generators and fuel, so where will they get the extra fuel? President Biden has declared war on coal, on gas, on pipelines, and on the companies providing all of these. That's why gasoline and diesel fuel are so expensive, along with natural gas. You're going to need 3 times as much gas as those stoves burn now, and Biden won't let us have it. Now please think about the name of this fuel, natural gas. It occurs naturally whether you like it or not, and it will go into the atmosphere on its own if we do not burn it. We need an entire episode on this topic, but think about this. They say methane, natural gas, is worse than carbon dioxide in the atmosphere for trapping heat. Well, if so, the only way to stop methane from going into the atmosphere is to burn it. Ask your chemistry teacher how much CO2 is released when you burn methane. Almost none. Then ask, what are all those pipes sticking up out of the ground down at the landfill? Those pipes collect methane, the natural result of the breakdown of organic material, so that it can be burned. They build factories next to landfills to make use of this methane so it doesn't escape into the air, where it's 20 times as potent a greenhouse gas as the same amount of carbon dioxide. Not burning the methane is a bad idea. One more problem with their scheme. Well, maybe there's some huge benefit to outweigh these disadvantages. They say they want to eliminate products of combustion to keep kids from having asthma attacks. Call me hard-hearted, but I'm skeptical of any save the children arguments, and if asthma is that big a problem, then we should look for a root cause. Especially given that our government is supporting so many other countries where the people are cooking with wood, which not only produces way more products of combustion and carbon, but also eliminates trees which clean the air, sequester carbon, and stabilize the soil, preventing floods like the ones in Pakistan every year. Yes, the biggest cause of deforestation on planet Earth is the cooking with wood, which takes place in countries like Haiti, Pakistan, and Sierra Leone, and we should be encouraging more people to cook with gas over there, not reducing it over here. Besides, there's another term for products of combustion, and that is indoor air pollution. The same government which makes us seal up our homes in order to reduce infiltration, drafts, and save energy has failed to provide for any ventilation. Every house is required by law to have a range hood with a fan over the stove. But most of those fans just move the air around the kitchen. All we need to do to solve any asthma problem is to make those vents silent, automatic, and most important, vent them outside. We can easily do all this. The ventilators already exist, but we don't. They used to vent the fumes outside. Why do they allow range hoods today to just circulate the same air if it's so dangerous? And I don't know about you, but the way we cook, we occasionally burn the beans and create more products of combustion or smoke than any gas range would produce in a year. Electric range or not, the government ought to be mandating proper ventilation and make-up air systems and actually do some good. Instead, leave it to the government to both create the problem of houses sealed too tight with no ventilation, then try to fix it by taking away your cooking fuel. Next, they'll just ban cooking. Then there's the methane threat, which is completely made up. Have you read the studies sourcing this information? It was published by Stanford University, one was in January of 2022, and reveals the sad state of higher education in California. Stanford reports that the gas ranges in America produce as much methane pollution as 500,000 automobiles. That sounds scary when it's actually a preposterous scare tactic. Because, first of all, Stanford's sample size for the study was 53. They made national headlines with a study of just 53 homes. No competent statistician would accept a survey with so few participants. There's even a statistical name for that error. It's insufficient sample size. Second, most of the methane occurred when the stoves were shut off. In other words, from leaks, not from stoves themselves. The stoves burn methane, they don't produce it. Switch all those leaky gas lines to corrugated stainless steel tubing and watch that problem vanish. Third, most of the methane that they did detect while stoves were actually operating came from gas ranges which use pilot lights rather than electric igniters. They selected stoves with old-fashioned pilot lights, and they don't even make those anymore. But finally, and most astounding, is this. The main reason stoves emit as much methane as 500,000 cars is this. Cars do not emit methane. Methane is fuel. And cars are specifically designed not to emit fuel, but to burn it. If it's not burned in the engine, then it's consumed in the catalytic converter. Don't believe me? Take it from the Environmental Protection Agency. It's on their website. Cars are not considered a significant source of methane emissions. The clowns at Stanford might as well say stoves emit more methane than a wind turbine, but that wouldn't scare anyone, would it? Instead, Stanford is making a statement they know will make you think that low emissions are actually high emissions. That's called lying. Why would the government push something that's such a bad idea? It could be an evil plan, but most bad things happen because of ignorance, not malice. Remember, the study came from California, which has the least stable electricity supply in the country, but is continuing to pass legislation making the problem worse, so ignorance is much in evidence. But we don't find any benefit, so we have to look for an evil motive, and it's the usual one: control. I once lived in a house with city water and a gravity furnace, which is a gas furnace that needs no electricity to operate. So during the occasional power outages, we could just do nothing and still get along just fine until the lights came on again. We had water and heat, and we could light a candle when it got dark. Now we're on a well and we have a generator like many others. We could hook the generator into the gas line, and when the power goes off, we could still just do nothing and get along fine, though for now I still have to lug gasoline. How does any of this work without natural gas? Some Democrats are backtracking and saying they don't want to take away your gas stoves, but it's all politics. They said the same thing about hydraulic fracturing and about your guns, but their legislation says something else. And it's true in a way. They don't want to ban your gas stove. They want to ban natural gas hookups entirely, and your stove will go away by itself. Gas hookups were banned in Berkeley, California in 2019, followed by San Francisco, New York City, with a promised ban across the state of New York by 2027. This is a terrible idea on any level. Never mind the cost of replacing your stove, furnace, water heater, and clothes dryer when the day comes that you can't use it anymore. Never mind the cost of upgrading your electrical service. Never mind the doubling or tripling of heating bills for people up north. These problems will be minor problems when there's a power failure, and you will not be able to run any of those appliances in your all-electric home for any amount of money. And you won't be able to charge your electric car to flee either. That means when there's a power failure, whether it's a real one caused by bad weather, or an avoidable one caused by the California or Texas government's failure to plan, or sabotage from an environmental activist shooting out a transformer, or an artificial shortage caused by the government making sure its special interests get electricity while delaying repairs for the people it doesn't care for, then those people without power will be helpless. That might be the poor, or the immigrants, or the MAGA Republicans, the tree huggers, the union neighborhoods. It could be anyone the current government doesn't like. We don't have that problem today because, first, gas lines seldom fail, and second, when they do, it's usually one big failure instead of thousands of little ones. Third, as long as we have a choice between natural gas or electricity, there's competition. The government, as always, hates competition and wants to take that choice away. Getting rid of gas stoves, there's no benefit to the people. There are many reasons it's a bad idea. The only one to benefit would be a malicious government. Seems like that's what we might have in Washington.